a lovely excuse for a bookish rainbow. Isn't it beautiful?
Salutations! Welcome to Loving the Language of Literacy. My name is Sophia Lee, and welcome to my May 2015 reading wrap-up, where I actually bothered to stand up. Unlike the past 3 months where I just sat down the entire video. The month of May was an okay reading month. I read a total of 15 things, which included 9 novels, 1 collection of poems, and 5 novellas. The month of May was actually a pretty weird reading month because I either was really busy or I had a lot of downtime because I was traveling, but I am pretty proud of the number that I got, and I can only hope to go forward because June means a summer vacation and a lot of traveling, and I will have a ton of time to read. Hopefully. Cross his fingers. First up, actually, we have a classic, which was Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. I was looking for something more thought-provoking to read because in the month of April, I was kind of dissatisfied because everything I was reading seemed really cliche. So I picked up Of Mice and Men on my ELA teacher's recommendation. It's a really short read, only around like 120 pages or something like that. If you don't know, this novel follows George Milton and Lenny Small, who are migrant labor workers in Central California, who dream of one day owning their own ranch and living off of the land. Lenny has a mental disability, he's kind of slow. It's basically his story as we go through his journey in one of the farms that he ends up at. He just really has these basic needs and desires which seem very natural to us but are confusing when he deals with them, and it's about the repercussions because of it. I only gave it the 4 out of 5 stars because I really think I didn't quite get or respect that makes it a classic, because I obviously comprehended the story, but I'm not quite sure what makes it such a revered work of American literature. Next up, we have Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars to. My issues with this book were that it was so hyped up to be such a unique voice in contemporary literature, and I ended up not connecting really well with the characters. I had some issues with the dynamics and the relationships, as well as just the way that Simon dealt with falling in love and discovering himself. To actually synopsize the story, this follows a teenage boy named Simon who's a gay drama geek. He's just trying to find his way in the world and figure out life. He's been messaging this boy named Blue, but he doesn't know who he is, and one day this other boy named Martin finds out about it and blackmails him. Then I read 2 selection novellas, The Queen and the Guard, both by obviously Kiara Cass. I gave The Queen 2 out of 5 stars, and I gave The Guard 4 out of 5 stars. These obviously were on their own kinds of scales for what they were. The Queen follows Queen Amberly in her own selection, and I didn't quite connect with her character any more than I did before, and I actually liked her a lot better in the selection trilogy itself. The Guard, on the other hand, was very inciting for Aspen's character. America obviously was having her own drama between picking Aspen or Maxon, but I never quite resolved it, and I have this issue with love triangles where I'm like, I like this guy until this guy's introduced and I like him, and I kind of teeter back and forth between the two, and I'm like, why can't she have both? But obviously that can't happen, and I was kind of brought over to Aspen's side again, and I'm just so done with the selection trilogy, although I'm going to regret saying that because in my June wrap-up there will most likely be The Heir, so that is kind of hypocritical. And on my novella kick from that day, I read Just One Night by Gail Forman, and this was really not a wise decision on my part because I, first of all, haven't read Just One Day since December of 2013, and I never actually read Just One Year, so I went into this really blind and without any memory, which is even worse because I had some inclination of what was going on, but at the same time I was completely lost. Just One Night and Just One Day follow Allison and Willem. They end at the very exact same point when Willem opens the door after Allison has finally found him. Just One Night is around a 40-page novella that explains the story of what happened between the two of them during their year of the journey and just the way they reconnected. Without spoiling it, the basic solution is that they found each other and everything is going to work out happily ever after. The end. Then we have My Heart Under the Black Holes by Jasmine Orga, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars to and read on a complete whim. I picked it up around 7 in the evening and was done by midnight. I quite enjoyed it. It was extremely fast-paced, a little bit too much for my own taste. I thought I didn't get enough time for the character development to sink in. But this follows a female protagonist who has just for a long time now been wishing to kill herself, but she's afraid she'll chicken out, so one day she goes online to a suicide forum actually and finds a buddy to commit suicide with who goes under the name of Frozen Rose. robot. They have 30 days together, and that's the span of the book, and the two of them are just counting down, planning their ways they're going to commit suicide. They have this inexplicable connection, and because I've read books like this before, I guessed the ending. Then I read Bell Jar by Meg Wolitzer, and I actually read this as an audiobook. This is the first audiobook that I've listened to fresh in a extremely long time, and I zipped through it in around, I don't know, 30 hours. I was just so enraptured with the story of it that I was just like, more. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars for creativity, and I've heard a lot about this when it came out in September of 2014. And this follows a girl named Jan Gallahue who, after the death of her boyfriend, has to go and to live at the barn, which is basically a mental institution. It's a place for their parents to dump them. The whole premise of this is that she gets plopped into this unique class called Special Topics, where she and 4 of the students get these red notebooks, and these notebooks have the power to transport her to Bell Jar, where she can get back what she lost, which for her case is her boyfriend. And at the semester, the notebooks will be filled, and she supposedly will have gotten over her loss. What I loved the most in the story was the character dynamics, because they seemed so interesting, and the backstories, you know how I love those, were extremely enticing, and I would highly suggest listening to it as an audiobook. Then I have Fairest by Marissa Meyer, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars to. It is book 3.5 in the Lunar Chronicles and follows 16-year-old Queen Lavanna before she becomes, obviously, Queen Lavanna. It's kind of the first half to the original fairy tale of Snow White. This book was written in order to incite compassion from readers for Lavanna, because she's seen as such a villain in all these other books, and it's supposed to give all the backstory and baggage that made her become a villain. I actually didn't feel that much compassion for her, while I did appreciate hearing her side, and I love reading villain complexes. But reading Fairest did entice me to get on it and read Crest, so I can read Winter by the time it comes out in November. And next up we have Maybe Someday by Colleen Hoover, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. It is officially my favorite Colleen Hoover book yet. This follows college student Sydney, who finds out that her best friend, who's also her roommate, and her boyfriend have been cheating with each other. She is made homeless on her birthday until the young man across the courtyard takes her into his apartment. And what happens is they develop this agreement for her to stay with him as long as she writes music for his band. He also has a girlfriend. They are strictly just friends, but obviously that has got to change. I could connect so much with the characters because there was a lot to do with poetry / songwriting, which of course, you know, I love to do, the poetry part. I can't sing to save my life. It was just very interesting also because, I don't want to spoil this for you, but the main male protagonist and love interest, Ridge, has this condition which hasn't been brought up in many other novels to date, and I was really interested in reading about a character with that condition. Then I read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and I'm pretty sure half of the BookTube community read it as well this month. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It was an extremely solid debut to the series, and of course it was another dosage of Sarah J. Maas, which I absolutely loved. Personally, I just couldn't get into the story as much as I would have liked to. I read it over around a week span, which also happened when I was reading Heir of Fire. What I think in the future is that I just need breaks in between to soak in all of it. This is a very loosely based Beauty and the Beast retelling. It didn't take too much, but it followed the main storyline, and it was pretty slow paced, and there was a bit filler time in my opinion, but the last 100 pages, it got that action-packed kick you also found in Throne of Glass, and I am absolutely going to be waiting on the very edge of my seat until the sequel comes out. And then I read the novella that goes with Maybe Someday, which is called Maybe Not. This follows Ridge's and Sydney's roommates, Bridget and Warren, who have this really complicated relationship that is mostly physical until they finally fess up and just, you know, make their feelings known. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. It wasn't needed as most novellas are, but I absolutely loved reading from their perspectives and hearing their sides of the story, because at some points in Maybe Someday I was like, what the heck is going on between the two? And this was a perfect, very succinct explanation to that. And then I read Never Never Part 2, which is co-written by Tamara Weber and Colleen Hoover, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars to. I read Never Never when I was back in my new adult kick in February, and I thought it was just an okay book, nothing compared to Slammed or Hopeless. I really enjoyed it because it was like a segment, it almost felt like a TV episode of the next installment in this series. This just picked up right where Never Never Part 1 left off, and I was just very interested in seeing the new perspective because the characters didn't seem quite as immature as they did in Never Never Part 1, and I liked them a lot more because we have no idea what's happening with the female protagonist, and the male one is basically the main person narrating, and he's just trying to figure everything out. Then I read The Probability of Violet and Luke by Jessica Sorensen. I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. It's a new adult read. I wasn't in love with it, and it's actually, a sequel, and I haven't read the first book. But obviously, with this kind of new adult situation, you don't have to read them in order, but I really should have in this particular case. It was just a bit too gritty without being raw, beautiful, or well written, in my opinion. There was so much exposure to alcohol and drugs, and just the much harsher sides of life. And the dynamics between the two characters, yes, they were sizzling, but at the same time, I wasn't in love with them being together, and I wasn't rooting for them. And if you don't root for the characters, what is the point of reading the book? And then I listened aloud to the collection of poems Here in Harlem by Walter Dean Meyer. I gave them a 5 out of 5 stars, and this was the best way I possibly could have consumed this. I love poetry, I appreciate it so much, but I also have issues reading it in terms of on a piece of paper, because without hearing it, I don't quite get the full effect of the intonation the author intended. And this was so amazing because there was this whole cast of narrators, and Here in Harlem narrates the story of this community, this neighborhood of people of all different ages and positions and just places in their lives, dictated and painted a picture of them so beautifully. The last book of this month was another Colleen Hoover. I gave Ugly Love a solid 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was definitely not as good as maybe Someday. I think I may have wanted to wait longer in between them, but I just couldn't because, Colleen Hoover, gotta get my hands on. This follows a girl named Tate who is getting her master's degree, and after dumping her boyfriend, moves in with her brother in San Francisco. Across the hall is her brother's friend, Miles, and the two of them automatically have this just physical connection. It could erupt into a lot more, but this book is told in dual perspective on 2 not parallel timelines. One is the present and one is 6 years earlier, and the 6 years earlier is from Miles' point of view, and it's explaining exactly what happened to him in his past and what made him believe that love was so very ugly. And then there's the future where it's Tate, where she's just trying to figure out what the heck is going on and why she can't break through his walls. I was just frustrated with how badly he treated her. Even though I could see where he was coming from, I still was just like, you stop this, she deserves so much better than you. And obviously the other characters were yelling that at him as well, and the ending was very satisfying to my needs and my feels, most definitely. May I just say that Ugly Love is the most steamy of all Colleen Hoover books I've read. Tell me in the comments below how many books you read in the month of May. Was it a good reading month for you? Was it a bad reading month for you? What was your favorite? And if you read any of the ones or looking forward to any of them. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Keep calm, read on, and I'll see you in a video soon. Goodbye! This is gonna be like the olden days when you kept walking in, throwing balls, and interrupting me. Let's just get into it.
Obviously, disillusioned about what traveling means. Oh, you've never been on a trip with my parents.
There's Paris!
Yeah, well, that was a fun trip. This is a work trip, which means we're going to be doing lots of walking.
Got it! This is a loosely based Sleeping Beauty No. And I ended up not falling in love. No, I'm talking about Becky Albertalli.